Most Kenyans do not realize that it is not only William Samoei Ruto, the President of Kenya, who has been pushed into a dangerous corner, who has been exposed and pushed into a corner where there seems to be no other way out. It is not only Ruto, but it is also another very powerful force. In fact, the same force that was involved in the 2022 presidential elections, so that we ended up in a situation where the person who got a fraction of the votes that the real winner got was actually announced president. Okay? And the best illustration of this is what has been going on in recent times over the visit in the country of the head of the Africa Command of the US military, General Langley. Now I find it very ironic and more than super fascinating that his second name is also the same name of the headquarters of the American CIA. The headquarters are based at Langley, Virginia. What a coincidence. Now, why should this information bother Kenyans so much? I'll tell you. This information should bother Kenyans a lot. Should make Kenyans lose their sleep, get very worried. Because it puts the country called Kenya in a very dangerous situation. You will have heard people say that there is nothing more dangerous than a wounded lion. And that is exactly our situation today in the country called Kenya. Now, before I come back to that and explain to you in full details this Langley Manenos, how his body language betrayed him, even as he was interviewed on various talk shows locally. Okay, before we come back to that, let us look at what is happening in Tanzania. Now, the two activists who were tortured, abducted and tortured, have come out in a press conference yesterday and revealed harrowing details, very terrifying, straight from a horror movie of what happened to them, okay, in the hands of the Usalama wa Taifa goons. If you have that news, you will know that they were subjected to abuse, that is sexual abuse. Now what that means is that this now becomes such a serious thing that it is a crime against humanity, something that the international community is supposed to take up and prosecute the Tanzanian authorities. Not just the Usalama wa Taifa officers who were carrying out the torture, but also the leaders, including the president of the country called Tanzania. However, I want us to be careful here to remember, this is not exactly how things work out. Hakuendangi hivi when it comes to international politics. What is most likely going to happen next is that those who are powerful, those who can pull the strings, will approach the Tanzanian authorities and make a deal. Okay? You either do this for us, we want 1, 2, 3, or we allow this to proceed to the international courts and you will be prosecuted. Please, let us always remember, as far as these units of ujasusi are concerned, it is always better, it is always preferable to them to maintain the status quo rather than bring in change. Because when you bring in change, you're dealing with brand new metrics, brand new people that you have to learn, get information on. It is a lot of work. A shortcut around all this is to get the current regime cowed, threatened, fearful, and working for you, and doing exactly what you want them to do. And therefore that will be option number 1. And it is quite likely this is exactly what is going to happen. Now, in case you have still not realized it, this is very relevant to Kenya. Why? because it is the same people, the wounded lion, who now has to deal with the situation in Tanzania and at the same time contain the situation in Kenya, where it seems it has been decided that they will go for a brand new regime. So you can see how complex, how tricky the whole situation is for them. In my opinion, they are fighting a battle they can never win. Why? Because in my opinion, the winds of change sweeping across Africa, and especially East Africa, cannot be stopped. It doesn't matter by who. It cannot be stopped. Okay? But then of course these powerful people have done many things which may have seemed impossible when they started the operations. But they succeeded. And therefore, in their mind, they can do it. And therefore, they will make attempts to do it. I want us to see something here that will impact all of us, something which is important to each and every one of us. Taking this scenario that I've just described, the only result, the only thing that is coming in our region is something called chaos, and especially economic chaos, okay, which will affect the way people earn their money, the way people live. It will affect that cozy job of yours. Everybody will be affected. And therefore, this is a very good time to look for how we can change our gears, change the way we operate, change the way we approach everything that we do, so that we survive this chaos, which indeed has already started. Because I think we're all aware that the Kenyan economy is on its deathbed. Okay, there should be no debate on that. But still the politicians tell us, inflation has gone down. Things are getting better. Just give us time, 1 more year, 2 years, things will be better. Ruto is the only person who can bring change to Kenya, etc., etc. You know the narrative. Despite all these rosy narratives, those of us who are on the ground, those of us who are coming into contact with the Kenyan economy every day, we know the truth. Things are very bad. Things have never been this bad. And therefore, I once again want to remind you that that blueprint I was led to produce in 2019 should be very helpful, extremely helpful. A game changer, I must say. Okay? Now I've received a lot of complaints and appeals from you about the price. And therefore, today, although I want this to be viable, for the cost that went into putting this together, for the cost that go into getting you all this information that you crave for every day, it needs to be viable, for the Kumekucha brand. But still, I want as many people as possible to get their hands on this very valuable information. And therefore, against the very strong advice of the accountants and the people who understand these things, I have made the decision to bring the price down to only Kenya shillings 2,999. I suggest you rush for it. This is a complete package, videos, but it also includes 2 very important ebooks. So that you'll have the information via video, but you can also get some valuable how-to tips, ideas, etc., etc. in 2 very valuable ebooks. So I strongly suggest that you make the decision and go for it right away. And those of you who reached out to me, I have done what you wanted me to do, and therefore take action. Okay? You can see details on your screens right now. It's very simple. Just M-Pesa 2,999 to that number, our usual number, and you will have it in your inbox. Please do not forget to text me your email address immediately after. I'm still dealing with these economic wars that we are facing, and are only going to get worse. It is also true that there are very many of us who at this particular point in time are looking to sell their property to at least raise some funds to see what to do next. You know, we are very fortunate to have a very valuable resource on this channel, where you can be able to reach the kind of people who may be interested in your property. We have had great success over a long period of time, mainly because of our audience, the kind of people who take in videos on this channel. It is clear that we have a lot of those people who are looking for such opportunities. Yeah, and therefore we'll be able to get the kind of exposure that may be very difficult to find anywhere else. I believe you can see our very reasonable rates for sponsoring a video and getting this information out on exactly what kind of property you have and what you're asking for it. Friends, please, let us not be caught off guard. Let us prepare. Right, back to General Langley. You know, in the old days, if this general had visited Kenya and he wanted an interview with the press, he would have ended up at the only TV station in those days, VOK. And the questions he would have been asked would have been very easy questions. How is the US being useful to Kenya? Why is the US such a good friend to Kenya? Give us a history of the relationship between Africa and the United States of America and how Africa has benefited. You know, questions like that, which are, for lack of a better word, backward, naive, and really discussing non-issues, yeah, and promoting the propaganda and the narrative of the oppressor. That is really what it is. And so, we need to appreciate as Kenyans that we have come a very long way, because the questions that were being asked of General Langley made him very uncomfortable, and you could see from his body language. Top on the list of the questions he was asked is the general has said that Ibrahim Traore is an enemy of the West. Why? Because he is using resources, which by the way belong to Burkina Faso, is using his country's resources badly. How so? He's using those resources to protect himself. He's putting a lot of money into the protection of Traore at the expense of the country called Burkina Faso. Now, you know that is laughable. It is laughable because the country called Burkina Faso is supposed to be a sovereign state. What business does a powerful Western country have getting involved in the domestic issues of Burkina Faso? You see, what has happened here is that for the first time in history, locals, Africans, Kenyans, have been able to see through the lies and the propaganda of the West. They're able to see very clearly the only reason why the West are very interested in Burkina Faso is because of her resources. It is all about American interests. It's all about the interests of the West. You see, the West cannot survive without the resources in Africa, and therefore they must always be able to control the resources in Africa. And it is also true that they thrive on the chaos in Africa. As long as there are no chaos in Africa, they will suffer. The West will not thrive. They will not be able to meet their objectives. And so this is worth celebrating. In other words, for the first time, our eyes have been opened wide, and we can see what is happening. And that is why, as I said earlier, it is not only Ruto who has been pushed into a corner. These Western powers have also been pushed into a corner. Because before, the general population welcomed them. We even looked up to them to help us change regimes. Yeah? Not realizing those regimes we wanted them to help us change are regimes they themselves put into power. That never crossed our minds. Okay? But now, we know. And that is a threat to the Western nations. Because going forward, it will be difficult for them to come to us with a cock and bull story, and we swallow it. It will be very, very difficult, impossible in fact. And you see, Ibrahim Traore is the symbol of the new Africa, and it seems the whole continent is rallying behind him, because they're able to see on the ground what all the good things happening in Burkina Faso as a result of this change which Traore has brought. Clearly, things will never be the same again. Never ever. Now, the quickest way of predicting the future very accurately is to go back to history. Okay? And in our case, we need to go back to history, to nations which discovered what we have just discovered now, nations which discovered this before us, and what happened. Okay? Now, the Arabs discovered what we have recently discovered some years back, and they started fighting back some years back. Now, let us look at what is happening in their countries. What is happening in their countries? War does not end in their countries. Isn't that correct? There is a lot of chaos. Isn't that correct? And therefore, we can safely conclude that the script of these powerful Western nations is that when they end up in a situation where the general population on the ground does not support them, sees through them, they go to plan B. And their plan B is war. They will supply arms to so-called rebel groups, which they will train and fully back. There will never be peace. I'm afraid that is the bad news. Okay? And that is what we should expect. And clearly this is not an exaggeration, because I've just given you the perfect example of what has happened in the past to nations and people who discovered this before we did. And it would seem, these media interviews that General Langley gave were not an accident. They were designed as a last-ditch effort to get the populations of this country fully behind the West, to get the people to ignore what they are seeing, what they have recently opened their eyes to, and go back to the old ways of looking at the West, of looking at them as our friends, of looking at them as people who are so idle that they don't care so much about their own country. They are coming to Africa to care more about us. What? Oh yes. That is the propaganda and the lies that have been fed to us and our forefathers for generations. I believe the move was also designed to gauge the reaction of Africans, Kenyans, on the ground. Now, I'm not sure how they assessed this, but in my opinion, the assessment is very clear. Africa is fed up. Kenya is fed up. And nobody wants to go back to the way things were before. And even after saying all this, please let us not forget, these people do not give up. And indeed, things are still moving for them. It should be clear to everybody that the remarks General Langley made to the Senate about Ibrahim Traore being a problem, was the excuse for the US to get involved in Burkina Faso. That is the usual first step to get military intervention on the ground. And most likely this military intervention will happen after that country has been destabilized. Maybe the president assassinated, or a rebel group made so strong in that country that they start to threaten things, and then the boots from the Western country arrive in the country. And sometimes they arrive chini ya maji. They don't announce, and they will tell you straight in your face they don't have people on the ground. But then the truth is usually different. It is important that we understand all that, and the fact that things are not good. Things in fact are very bad. But in my opinion, we need to take heart, because these are the birth pangs of a brand new Africa. These are the very painful birth pangs, and other even more painful birth pangs are coming, so that the brand new nation called Kenya is finally birthed. We will have great joy, we will smile, we will laugh, we will have joy that we cannot describe after all the blood and the tears and the pain. Okay? The joy will come immediately after that. But there's no shortcut. We have to pass through the birth pangs, blood, crying, injury, etc., etc., before the brand new baby is finally born. By the way, I have a question for you, okay, which you can answer in the comments area below. I would love to hear your opinion, as I always do. Here's the question. In your opinion, do you think that it is an accident that the general who is commanding the African command of the US Army, US military, is black? Do you think it is an accident? Do you think it was just a coincidence that this general up for promotion was given the African command? Do you think that is an accident? Tell me what you think in the comments area. Okay? Now, I am sure most Kenyans do not understand why this rallying call invented by Wamanyoro, Rigathi Gachagua, against Ruto irritates and makes Ruto and his men so mad. And that term is one term. Why does that thing irritate Ruto insiders so much? Well, the answer to that question is more than shocking. You see, Rigathi Gachagua knows a lot of inside secrets. Obviously, he's not going to talk about all of them, okay? But the secret behind this one is big. And actually, it is in my very latest, highly sensitive special report. Let me be honest with you. I have never produced a more sensitive special report than this one. Never ever. Because it digs very deep into a secret of this regime most people still don't know. People still don't know. A vast majority of people don't know. But it is all revealed in this highly sensitive latest special report. Please make an effort to get it. By the way, the 20 lucky people who have a super pass, I have announced those lucky people in the description area below. So after taking in this video, you can go there and see if you're amongst them. And if you are, you can be sure you will receive all this information for free. Anyway, this special report, it names names, it names places, it explains everything very neatly. You will not believe. Okay, I believe you can see details on your screens right now. For the very special price of only Kenya shillings 2,999 or $31, you can have it today, in the next few seconds, in the next few minutes. And as usual, in case you missed the other earlier special reports, I will also include it in this one. Okay? Just to give you a hint, a very sensitive one. Are you aware that there was a link in all this high wire politics drama? There was a link to the Monica Kimani murder. Oh yes, you heard me right. So get that special report, and please, when you get it, don't share it. Okay? Please. Right. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.